A very warm welcome to each one of you to this evening's edition of KMA Leader Insight Lecture Series. Today we gather here to explore a subject that is not only crucial but also increasingly urgent: artificial intelligence, startups, and Indian deep tech sector. To begin the proceedings on a solemn and respectful note, I invite you all to join us in a moment of silent prayer. May I request everyone to rise for the prayer. Thank you. May I now invite Mr. Anup Thomas Abraham, member of Young Minds Kerala Management Association, to welcome you all and introduce our esteemed speaker for this evening.
Good evening, everyone, and a warm welcome. It gives me great pleasure to introduce today's speaker, since he is someone I've known since school, as both of us were in the same batch in school. Even as far as back in primary school, Athul had a deep understanding of technology and a passion for experimenting with hardware to create innovative products. In fact, I distinctly recall seeing his products on display at a public exhibition when he was still only in the third standard. Athul Ram is the CEO and founder of Verdatum AI, a company founded in 2017. They produce autonomous systems for the defense sector. His organization has been awarded Best Defense Innovation and Best Startup Indigenization by Electronic Industries Association of India in both 2022 and 2023. His firm is also a winner of IDEX Industrial Internet of Things Grand Challenge. Winning the IDEX IIoT is a significant achievement in the field of industrial innovation. His clients include numerous public and private defense institutions, including DRDO, Defense Research and Development Organization. He completed his BTech in Mechanical Engineering from Rajiri College and dropped out of Masters in AI from IIT Jamshedpur to focus on scaling a startup. I present to you Athul.
Thank you, sir. Now I would like to welcome our distinguished speaker, Mr. Athul Ram, CEO and founder of Verdatum AI. Over to you, sir.
Thank you for the introduction, Anu. Thank you to Jose for inviting me. I had attended last week's session and then we got to talking and now I'm here. So when I was a boy, when I was maybe 5 or 6, I saw some defense personnel operating some equipment. And I was spellbound, I was absolutely infatuated with the idea of becoming a defense head. And from that moment on, I worked hard to be where I am. If I said that, that would be a lie. That is not what happened. I had no idea that I would be here or become a defense vendor. But startups in India or startups everywhere, the founders expected to have a story. Like one story where, this is the pivotal moment in his life where he decided to go down this path. And, that's why he's so passionate about things. I have no such, moments of clarity. I've never had this moment where I can look back and say, okay, this point is where I knew, I wanted to start my own company or I wanted to go into deep tech, right? I'm more of a accidental entrepreneur, I guess, right? It wasn't like a vision which I had that, okay, I need to start a company or anything like that. I was like Anup said, I was always like very passionate by technology and more so how much that technology impacts society, right? If you look back, even from something as a light bulb has changed people's lives, right? We can't imagine a world without a light bulb today, but that did exist at some point. We can't imagine the power not coming on. We complain, we call KCB and all and say, whatever comes to mind whenever the power doesn't switch on. And that's something which has really inspired me, right? And even as a kid, that difference in how much technology we have compared to a lot of other countries is something which I've always found that stark contrast in, right? You look at the US, you even look at China right now. They're far ahead of what India can offer in terms of technology. And that difference is something which I did want to address even back then, and that's something which really fascinated me. And how we started was in college. We wanted to make, like any engineering students, I guess, we wanted to make robots, right? So we wanted to make a oil cleaning robot. We heard about an oil spill which happened. It was a big shipwreck, and there was a lot of oil spilling out. And we wanted to make robots to clean this oil spill, right? And like any young engineer who, clearly misunderstood his capabilities, we set out, how hard could it be, right? So then we started realizing what are the sensors we require. So one a common sensor which always came up is called LiDAR, right? It's like radar. I'm sure all of you have heard of radar. Just like that, it uses light. So if I had a LiDAR device here, I can get this image, this room's 3D image almost instantly, right? And that's really important for robotics, autonomous cars. Those of you who have any cars with self-driving capability, self-parking capability, will either use radar or LiDAR. Tesla uses computer vision, but it's not as effective. So we were like, okay, LiDAR is not available in India. It's super expensive. I think one LiDAR unit back then would cost tens of lakhs. And that's not something obviously college student could afford. So then we looked at what is LiDAR. We're like, oh, this bulb shoots out a beam of energy, this sensor receives it, and it gets a distance. Simple, how hard could it be? So then we set out to build LiDAR. And it was much harder than what we originally anticipated. But then along the way, the government noticed this. We applied for a few grants, and the government was like, this is an interesting idea, why don't you go ahead, why don't you try this? And that's how really Verdatum started, right? How all of us, me and my co-founder, he's sitting here in the crowd today, and he's smiling because he doesn't have to speak. But we decided, okay, let's give this a shot. Let's try making indigenous LiDAR devices. And there was a lot of interest. We spoke to Ashok Leland and a lot of other automotive OEMs. DRDO was also interested at that point. And I think that is slowly where we understood the gap in the technology availability between countries, right? In the US, you can get equipment much easier. It's much easier to innovate, right? It's easier to get funded. India, it's not like that, right? In China also, they don't use the same methodology as the US, but you go to Shenzhen market and you can get any tools you want, right? And for the cheapest price, you won't believe the kind of prices which China can produce domestically. And that boosts innovation quite a lot. And we started out with LiDAR, but along the way, we decided, okay, we want to do autonomous systems, we want to do drones, we want to do autonomous ships. But if we do top down, which is what most startups, most companies in India do, they will want to build the autonomous ship, or they will want to build the drone from the top. They will want an end product today. That won't happen unless you are very reliant on foreign countries, right? So we decided, okay, we'll do the long game. We will build piece by piece. We will build small components of the drone until we get to the drone, right? And now it's been, I think, almost 7 years. We still haven't gotten to the drone, right? That is how much of components go into these systems, and that's how reliant we are on these foreign countries. Now Verdatum, we supply everything from underwater enclosures, which can go up to almost 2 kilometers in depth under the ocean, to torpedo systems which are fired out of submarines. Not destructive torpedoes, they are sensing torpedoes. So we make something called SSLX-BTs, which are fired out of a submarine like a regular torpedo, and it measures the temperature profile of the ocean. And we do so more or less indigenously, except if one sensor which we import. And they are very upfront about that, right? Whenever we do import, we will say, okay, this is imported. In my topic, one of the things which I want to talk about is the deep tech sector in India. And AI is something which is catalyzing a lot of change, right? Both positively and negatively. I'm sure all of you have used ChatGPT at this point, right? Can I see a show of hands who all of you use ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Meta AI in WhatsApp? Yeah, most of us has in some form interacted with an LLM. But AI existed way before LLMs were a thing. Our company name is Verdatum AI, and we've actually built a lot of AI solutions which weren't LLMs. And back then, I still remember in 2019, whenever we pitch a AI solution, the first response we get is AI is infeasible. Don't bring it to us. It's highly inaccurate. It doesn't work. Don't bring us AI. Those very same clients will now come back to us and be like, let's do AI. Like everybody wants to do AI. I read an article recently which said that the more times a CEO in a earnings call in an S&P 500 company in the US says the word AI, the better his stock will do the next day, right? That is how much now we've hyped up this word of AI, right? We see it as a panacea. You have any problem, AI. You have cancer, AI. That is the solution which we've kind of adopted at this point. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. AI will be transformative. Just like how we had the industrial revolution, we are having like an information AI revolution, but we haven't really figured out how that's going to happen, right? And I'm sure we will. We've gotten past many other challenges. But the issue with AI is the over-reliance and the hype around it. Recently, I was a judge at a program at a college, and every single idea, I kid you not, I think I evaluated 20 ideas that day on stage. Every single one of them was an AI wrapper. And an AI wrapper means you're using the ChatGPT or Claude API in the background, and you're simply just putting an interface or something like that, right? Every single one of them. And that is dangerous, right? Because our engineering students is kind of the zeitgeist of what our future kids see, right? None of them have original ideas anymore. All of them are reliant on AI. Okay, you want to build a chatbot? AI, use a wrapper. And again, the issue with that is ChatGPT, Meta, DeepSeek, none of them is from our country, right? We become very reliant on another country's API for even of our major startups. So many startups have raised massive amounts of funding which we can't even imagine just on AI wrappers, right? But then it's something which, if Anthropic or OpenAI wanted to recreate it the next day, they could. Maybe 2 days of their engineers' work and this entire startup's work product is done. They have nothing really defensible, right? And that doesn't seem like a threat until it happens, right? War was a distant, dream or a memory for us, right? We will never think of war which is happening, but now we have Pahalgam happening, and it's on everybody's mind, right? The other day I saw an article that people near the border are panic buying groceries because we might escalate into war. Just like that, we don't know what the future holds. So this over-reliance and encumbrance of AI is quite dangerous, right? And I started my master's in AI well before this whole ChatGPT thing kind of came into play. And I remember one of the number one fears a lot of my peers had, my batchmates had, was placements, right? Now that's completely been elevated. I think they're the most, what do you say, I think that they have the highest packages in all of the IITs probably because they were AI in masters in AI, right? And in India also, right now a lot of startups work on AI. But whether they're actually providing value, whether they're actually doing something intrinsic or whether they're just wrapping around a solution, that is not completely known to us. And recently, you may have all heard of a company called Blue Smart. I used to use their cabs when I was in Bangalore, right? It was an EV company, and recently the founders have been found or accused of a lot of financial impropriety. Another company which again was raised millions of dollars to make EV factories, finally when the audits went, the factory had nothing. They didn't even pay their electricity bill, right? That level of marketing is what's happening at this point around AI, right? The other day I saw an online solution where they were saying that they can use AI to replace accountants, right? Maybe in one fine day that might happen, but right now that's not going to happen, right? And this attitude of choto, I think as Indians we generally have that, right? If somebody does anything wrong, let's just let it go. That is very common. And as somebody in the deep tech sector, I wanted to shed some light on how that's also dangerous, right? So in our sector, in the defense sector, indigenization is very important. And we report indigenization as to how many components we produce in India and how many we buy abroad. That can be done in two ways. It can be done by component count or it can be done by cost. Now the issue with cost, which is the most common, is I can buy something for 100 rupees from China. I can sell it for 250 rupees, saying that I have assembly cost, service cost, and things like that, and I can claim like 75-80% indigenization. Done. And it saddens me to say, but a large majority of companies do this, right? It's a very common thing. We have lost innumerous contracts to people who would say indigenous, but it's basically a DJI drone with the sticker. Some people even don't even get rid of the sticker. You know, they will just stick something on top or paint something and be like, it's Indian made, right? And it's been an issue recently. Army recently cancelled a 200 crore contract for drones because they were made in China. So you can imagine the. Honestly, I'm impressed by the courage these people have, right? I get scared whenever there's a GST miscalculation of 5 rupees, and these people are like, pitching for 200 crore contracts saying this indigenous while they're selling Chinese equipment. And in any other sector, I wouldn't say that's an issue, right? You're in cosmetics, you're in textiles, sure, go for the cheapest source of manufacturing you have, that's just smart business. But deep tech, defense, aerospace is those specific sectors where this shouldn't fly, right? All of you have heard of the Ukraine-Russia conflict, right? Imagine something similar happens to us, and China no longer supports India. They banned all exports of drones to India. So all these people who've been selling, foreign-made drones suddenly stops. Our army has no longer access to drones, and it doesn't stop with just the homemade drones. One of the main components of a drone is flight controllers, and I don't think there's a single company in India which makes flight controllers indigenously. Many claim, but none of them really do. And even if you make the motors, even if you make the batteries, everything else in India, for a drone without that flight controller, it cannot fly. So that's why indigenization is important, and that's why we should take this more seriously, right? And I can't blame my clients, or I can't blame the sector for doing this as well. Because everything is a tender. So if a scientist buys something as a tender and then somebody else is L1, and obviously if this is a bought solution, it will be cheaper. And then he finally gets the equipment and he inspects it and he sees, okay, this is Chinese. He can do two things. One, he can report that this has happened, then his entire tender gets cancelled. He has to write like 200 notes probably to get that done. He's also under investigation partially. So nobody does that. They'll be like, okay, just let it go. Then this same vendor will go to the next client and be like, look, the other people bought it. They didn't say any issues, right? And this kind of it snowballs into a much larger issue. And though it seems harmless, at a macro scale, it affects companies who are really doing the indigenization, right? Why would another company go to so much work, do it in India at a higher price? Definitely, if you're making in India, especially initially, it will be at a higher price. There's nothing you can do. Why would they do that when they're not getting any business? Why would they do that when they're not getting any investments, right? And in India, the investors are also not so savvy. They hear about all these marketing pitches and things like that, and they're kind of wooed away. So they also will tend to invest in these companies who kind of use or kind of wrap around a lot of these solutions. And that affects the real companies or the real researchers who are actually putting in the effort to kind of make this indigenous. And the more developed countries, they found ways around this, right? The US has a list called Blue UAS. It's a list of companies where the military can buy from, and they have verified to the very last component that it is made in the US, right? We lack a system like that. We lack that accountability, right? If this was Germany or something, this would not fly. You lie on an official document, you're done for. You will never ever get business. But that's not the case in India. And like I said, that might be the system which we've all known and accepted, but that's not something which we should accept in these specific sectors. Look at AI itself. We don't have a fundamental model. Now the government is suddenly very interested in making a model, but again, who will they select, how well will they do, that remains to be seen, right? We've never had a culture of R&D. All of you have much more experience than me, I'm sure, and all of you have worked at very large institutions. If you look back and see how much of your organization invested into R&D, I'm sure it will be like a footnote, right? We've never had that attitude to R&D, except a few I'm sure like the very select few organizations. We've never been an R&D country. Our biggest organizations are BPOs. We look at Infosys, all the titans of IT, they're not making any fundamental models or changes or anything like that. They are doing business process outsourcing, and there's nothing wrong with it. That is a fantastic business to be in. Not anymore because of AI, but it used to be a fantastic business to be in. and but it's holding back research, right? And we are touted to be one of the fastest growing economies. We are trying to compete with China, US, UK, and everything. I remember getting so many WhatsApps about us overtaking the UK in terms of growth, right? But you look at so many other things, we are so far behind. And one of the major reasons for all of these technological backwardness is that we don't support truly deep tech entities, right? And I can't blame anybody for that. If I was an investor, I wouldn't invest in deep tech. It has the highest risk of any kind of startups as well. And on the positive note, we have people who are incredibly passionate about delivering these products, right? For every 10 founders which I see who want to just raise some funds, exit, and then enjoy his life in the US, I see people who struggle every day to kind of build in India and etc. I know CEOs of defense companies who will not look at your face when talking to you, but have delivered the most incredible systems, right? I know clients who will go well out of their way. These are armed forces personnel who will go well out of their way to support an indigenous product, right? But again, these challenges are not insurmountable. And you all hear about all these kids going abroad. I think I studied Rajagiri mechanical batch. I think 90% of my batch, if not more, is right now abroad. There's a place in Canada called London, Ontario. I'm pretty sure it's completely run by Rajagirians. I think from the petrol pump onwards to the city hall, my batchmates are there. Right? That is the situation there. I have a lot of friends who work at Apple, Microsoft, and a lot of other massive companies, and they don't go because they kind of hate the country or they've enjoyed the luxuries of the US and Canada. They go because there is no opportunity, right? If you studied masters at IIT and you want to apply yourself in R&D, how many companies are there in India where you can do that? How many companies are there in Kerala where you can do that? I have a friend who's in Apple and who hates it there, right? Who hates the US, but wants to stay because her work will only work in an R&D company. And that is a major issue which we are facing. I find it very hard to socialize in Kerala because there's very few people my age left here, right? And that's not an issue which is endemic just to Kerala. There's so many states which are facing the same issue. And I mean, maybe our youth doesn't understand that if you're jobless here, you're going to be jobless in Canada as well. It might be more stylish, but that's the end truth. Right? But these issues will not disappear until we take action. Right? Our politicians kind of need to wake up and stop blaming other countries for everything and kind of take ownership. Right? We've never had this kind of push for these kind of advanced technology. We had IITs. I dropped out of an IIT and I thought that would be really bad. But I feel like at this point I have more value because I dropped out than if I had actually graduated and gotten a job. And I think I'm one of the privileged few who got into one of those institutions, right? If you're not into IITs and all, the opportunity in India is minuscule, right? Where are you going to go for funding? Who's going to believe you, right? If I know a kid who's extremely talented in drones, and he wants to apply himself, but he only has a diploma, right? Nobody's going to fund him, 100%. Me with the IIT dropout itself finds it so hard to find funding and work. How is a person with a diploma going to get it, right? And that's not. And these are the things which we need to address because these people might be the creators of the next big thing. You never know. So these kind of policy-related matters is something which we really need to address, and it's high time we do. We are being touted as a developed economy. We want to be Viksit Bharat, Atmanirbhar Bharat. All that is well and good. I love those programs. I would be out of business without Atmanirbhar Bharat, but the what's happening at the grassroots level needs to be examined, right? I've gone to many grant applications where one of the, it'll probably be an SBI or an SVT manager who's a financial judge, and then one of the questions he'll ask me is, when is the last time you billed? And I'll be like, sir, maybe August. And then he'll be like, oh, why so long ago? And I'll be like, sir, our one bill is like around 20 lakhs. And then he'll be like, no, see, that is not an excuse. Sign up a good startup, sign up a good healthy company is regular billing. And I'm like, yes, sir, but in our sector that's not possible. You're a deep tech R&D company, I don't bill every day. He's like, no, that is the deep tech company you are evaluating right before you had regular billing. And I'm like, oh, okay, sir, what technology are they? They're into food delivery. So that is our definition of a deep tech, right? Food delivery, Swiggy and all is considered deep tech. And I didn't get that grant, he got it, right? So that is where our system kind of needs fixing, right? We don't get the right people to evaluate the right people, right? And I have no hate towards that SBI gentleman. Even if I see him now, I'll shake his hand and say hi. But the issue is he wasn't the right person for that panel, right? If you're evaluating deep tech startups, you need to know what deep tech startups are. If you are evaluating an AI product, you need to be able to ask the right questions for an AI product, right? If you put me in a panel for the food industry, I would have no clue as to what questions to ask, right? I would only ask questions which are relevant to me. I would ask you, what is your technical debt? What programming language are you using, right? And these questions obviously doesn't make sense. It sounds stupid to the person who is actually relevant, but it's very common. I remember one time I was in a panel, and the panel was all men. And then one lady came up, and her idea was for a menstrual cup. And again, it's all of us were well within, we didn't know what questions to ask. So that diversity in that panel is also extremely important, right? Speaking about that, in the defense sector, it's even less. I have not yet met a female founder for a defense startup. So that's another issue which obviously needs to be looked at as well. Now, on the flip side, what all this adversity does is it gives you frugal innovation, right? A lot of Indian startups, they don't make world-changing technologies. We've never had a ChatGPT come out of India. We've never had Tesla or any kind of company come out of India. But we have companies who do frugal innovation, right? And there's so many examples I could give. I'm sure all of you have seen Aether, right? Aether was a small startup back in the day, and they're doing pretty well now. And again, they didn't do anything fantastic. They didn't create a scooter which can go for 200 miles or 400 miles on a single charge. No, they created a great scooter for the Indian market, right? And they did it much cheaper than anybody else. Look at ISRO. ISRO is like one of the most inspirational organizations we have in this country, right? They've created rockets for the price of a Hollywood movie. We are one of the cheapest people to get a satellite into space, and the cost is going down. Recently, we had a interaction with the honorable chairman of ISRO, and he was showing me a graph which is cost per kg to get a satellite into space, and that graph is coming down exponentially. That is an incredible feat we've achieved. And he told me that there's a photo in ISRO still hanging in one of the entrances. I'm sure all of you have seen it. It's one of the first launches we had. It's these two people holding a rocket on a cycle and kind of towing it forward, right? And a lot of people, including my own mother, will ask me, why ISRO? There's so many other places to put money, right? Why do you want to launch satellites? Why do you want to know what's on the moon, right? There's people starving here on Earth. Why do you want to go to the moon, right? It's a very common question which a lot of people ask me. That is, second to why aren't you not married yet? The second question I get most often is, why is ISRO sending money to the moon when you have so many other things better to do in India when I go for a family function? And the very simple answer which I always give is to inspire more people, right? You need icons, and we have very few icons in India in this sector, right? Somnath sir is doing great things with ISRO. ISRO is one of the few icons we have. Industrialists have a lot. Ratan Tata, all of them. I'm a big fan of Ratan Tata. All of them, there's so many icons in that. But we have very few icons in the tech sector, right? We have very few companies who still exist, who still are innovating, who are doing something which nobody has done before. That's the definition of deep tech, right? You're trying to solve a fundamental problem. You're trying to do something which nobody has done before. And that doesn't come easy, but it's very rewarding. And maybe you won't crack it, maybe these technologies won't work out, but there's so many other benefits to it. All of us use GPS, right? I was driven here, we use Google Maps. All of you, I'm sure, have used GPS at some point. That is a defense technology initially, right? It's still being used by the US Defense Forces. Desert Storm is often referred to as the most successful campaign of the US, and that is again because of GPS. And now we can't think of a life without GPS. Compasses, digital compasses, which a lot of our aircraft use to fly right now, was originally a defense innovation. So whether it's space or defense, you might not see the immediate effect in your lives, but it's there, right? It's because our soldiers stand guard at the border that we can sleep at night. Just like that, it's because all these satellites are kept up in space by organizations like ISRO that we can talk over anybody to anybody in the world. It's because of small firms who make the tiniest of chips which are put on those missions that we can all do that, right? So that is how the sector is right now, and I'm very positive. I'm generally a very positive person, so I feel that we can change, right? The recent Pahalgam incident itself has galvanized so much change. So much of people are now more authentic because they are afraid, right? What will we do if we have to actually rely on ourselves? And it, we've pulled through on in many situations. I remember my father telling me about the 90s. It was a horrible situation, right? Poverty was rampant, and Manmohan Singh came out with what is now studied at Harvard, Stanford, and almost all universities who teaching economics with LPG, right? Just like that, we may not know or lead in any kind of situation, but we are great at responding to it in the frugal innovation which we have. And in the end, another question which I also very get, especially from college students, is will AI replace me, right? And that is a question of not will, is when, right? Most jobs AI will take over slowly, but that's okay because back in the 20s, 1920s, we had horses. Horses was the most common mode of transport, right? And there was an industry which flourished all around that as well. We had stable boys, we had people who would grow grass or whatever feed the horses used. We had specific institutions which would serve these horses. There was a flourishing industry behind it. Then Ford came out with this extremely popular car, extremely affordable, and then that disappeared. And I still have those newspaper clippings, right, where New York Times was reporting this is going to be a massive loss of jobs. You know, the economy is going to crash. But then, can you think of a world where that didn't happen? That we chose horses and carts over cars? No, we can't. And can you imagine all the jobs that exist today back then? Can you imagine somebody working at Ather or Tesla or not even back then? If you went to my grandfather in the 90s and said, "Hey, Kerala is no longer an agrarian economy. Nobody really farms in Kerala. What do you think your grandson will do?" I doubt my grandfather will be like, "Oh, he's gonna study engineering and then go for a defense vendor. He's gonna make technology for submarines, right?" No way, you know. Just like I will not be able to predict what 3 generations down will be able to do. So you don't have to be afraid of what AI is going to do or won't do. The only question we should ask is whether we should let it do it, right? And a story which, and I'll end on this note as well, a story which I always remember is back in the Cold War, and you can imagine this. It's height of the Cold War, it's 1983. The US and USSR is at each other's necks, right? Any wrong move, it's nuclear war. There was one of the most common purchases by the ultra wealthy at that point was bunkers, right? Nuclear fallout bunkers. That is how scared people were. And in the USSR, this person called Stanislav Petrov, he saw that the US was launching nukes on their sensing system. I think it was called OCO, I don't remember exactly. But the US was launching nuclear missiles at USSR. And he saw that on a screen that there was one nuclear ballistic missile heading towards USSR, and 4 following. And his paradigm, his orders was to immediately alert his superiors so they can launch a counterattack, right? But he suspected it. He was like, is this actually a launch or is the sensors failing, right? He doubted himself. And he thought, and then he decided not to tell his superiors until further confirmation came. And in the USSR, you will be shot for this, right? So he was risking his life to kind of prevent this war. And confirmation never came. We know that US never launched any kind of missiles at USSR. But then, if he had followed his orders, if that was an AI, immediately that would have been reported. We would have had nuclear fallout. The world as we know it today would not exist, right? And that is why our humanity is so important. And that's something which AI will never replace, and I hope not, right? So that is where we lead our humanity, right? And that is something which, like I said, I believe that AI can never replace. So on that note, I'm going to end. Thank you.
Sorry, that story is not clear. Can you tell clearly
Yeah, sure.
that USSR, this guy detecting the nuclear missiles aimed at
So-
USSR, story is not clear.
So he had, so the USSR and the US have a lot of these early warning systems for nuclear launches. So the USSR, this person called Stanislav Petrov, he detected
What is the name?
Stanislav Petrov.
Ah.
He on his screen he saw that the US has launched in total 5 missiles against nuclear missiles against the USSR. So he was under orders to immediately report this to his superiors so that they can launch a counterattack. And back then the system was immediate retaliation, right? It was a time, like I said, it was the height of the Cold War. Both the USSR and the Americans had a system where they had seismic sensors on the ground. So even if everybody is dead, if a nuclear bomb strikes that area, automatically nuclear bombs are going to go back to the US, right? So everyone was on a hair trigger, and this person decided not to report it to his superiors. He completely ignored that there was 4 missiles coming to the USSR because he suspected that these sensors were malfunctioning, and they were. There was no such nuclear launches from the US which was happening. It's just that the systems kind of completely malfunctioned. And he is credited with kind of preventing a all-out nuclear war and subsequent fallout. Because if he had reported his superiors, they would have launched retaliatory missiles against the US, and the US would have launched them back. And both of them in total have, I think, tens of thousands of nuclear warheads ready to go at that time. This is even before all the nuclear disarmament is, right? So probably we would have gone into a nuclear winter or whatever would have happened, or hydrogen bombs, so probably the earth itself would not have existed the same way. So he is often kind of credited as kind of saving the entire world, and that would not have happened if it was an automated system. The automated system would have probably immediately believed whatever sensors was telling it, because and in the end I truly believe he was afraid, right? There was nothing else that was stopping him. He was afraid of what will happen if he launches, and that is a false alarm, right? And that is not something which AI, at least currently, has, right? So that is something which AI really can't replace, the humanity which we have. I hope that's clear.
Thank you so much, sir. We now open the floor for a brief question and answer session.
Hi, Athul. Thanks. I think, a big congratulations to you. I have seen many. Hello. Yeah, many presentations on AI and startups. First of all, congratulations for being brutally honest. I've seen many people saying, everything is hunky-dory, fantastic, and I think you have really taken the audience through the real nitty-gritties and real problems which is faced by the startup ecosystem. A couple of things. One about the story. I think he decided based on his gut feel, saying maybe the sensors would have gone wrong, and the story ended well. What if his gut feel was wrong, and really those 5 missiles founded on USSR, he would have been the biggest traitor for that country forever. So AI, I'm a person who has been working with deep tech. AI does not take decisions just like that. AI obviously take decision after, obviously Gen AI take a lot of decision after deep analytics, and it's never based on a gut feel whether it could be right or wrong. And the ability for AI to take those decisions are far superior, which we see now. So it's just a comment. My question was on your presentation, which was the first part, which is I think you really mentioned a lot of real life problems. What an entrepreneur, what a product development, real product development team face in India, including availability of spares, parts, funding, ecosystem, market. I think you covered everything up. So we are where we are, and we obviously can't turn the tables in 5 years, 10 years. It takes long, 15, 20 years if you really want to turn around the tables. What is your message to the startup guys who are there now, who want to venture into these kind of things? You mentioned a lot of difficulty. Whether should they really go into those kind of details, building it from scratch, or the kind of wraparound solutions which you were mentioning, saying already technology is there in various forms, use that and build something. Well, India is a big market. We are talking about 150 crore people, and it's a massive scale market. So, what is your message? What is your thoughts for youths who really want to get into these deep tech? Should they really focus on go through all this pain grindings and all that, and maybe end up with no success, or should they look at as they rightly say, if you want to fly, you don't build an airline. If you want to fly, you buy an airline and fly, or you hire an airline and fly. So what's your message? What's your direction to youngsters who really want to get into the startup world ecosystem? Thank you.
So my answer is twofold. One, with regards to deep tech, if the person really wants to pursue deep tech and true deep tech, not then that doesn't include wrappers or any kind of thing, right? You're kind of trying to do something which is more fundamental, something which hasn't been done before. It's kind of more of a research-oriented thing, right? And anybody who's done research or any kind of tinkering will know that the chances of failure are much higher than chances of success, right? So anybody who's getting into deep tech, 100% they need to understand that more likely than not they will fail. That is a risk they will have to get. They have to be okay living with that risk. And if their psyche is not up to it, that is 100% okay, right? It's a massive pressure or it's a massive mental strain on anybody who is building 10 years into the future, right? You can't envision this project, you can't see the product, you can't show progress. Your friends and relatives are asking, what are you working on? It's impossible to explain. And secondly, no matter how negative anybody says, if you really want to do it, you will do it, right? No matter how many people have said no to me, I wouldn't have chosen any other way than to take this journey, right? So I don't think if you are really impassioned by that specific technology, that deep tech thing which you want to do, I don't think you will be kind of driven away by any kind of negativity or any kind of challenges, right? And recently I read an article which said that one of the traits which make executives successful is also how delusional they are, right? Because it's a necessary thing, right? If I'm a realist, entrepreneurship will not work for me. I don't think so, right? Especially in the tech sector. If I feel like I am realistic, I would have closed shop long ago, right? It's kind of that having that vision, delusion, manifestation, whatever you want to call it, of okay, this is the future where I see a good value for my product, or this is going to change. And that value could be anything. It could be societal gain, it could be money. There's nothing wrong with that, right? It could be a lot of things. So as long as you can see that, I don't think deep tech is an issue. So, and whenever a person, even I go to college quite often, and whenever a college kid comes up to me and says, I want to build a deep tech business, first thing I will ask them is, are you sure? You know, like, and that is okay. We don't need hundreds or thousands of people coming into deep tech, right? That is actually counterproductive. Like you said, India is a huge market. There's lots of opportunities. I'm saying the right people need to come into deep tech, right? The right people need to be researching. Not if you are a genius at marketing, deep tech might not be the sector for you. If you want to build a business which is profitable within 2 years, deep tech is definitely not the sector you want to get in, right? And in India, I still remember the Fresh to Home founder saying that even if you sell a matchstick, you're set for the rest of your life, right? Because like you said, we have a huge market. That's why we have such a complex relationship with China as well, because China is so dependent on us as a market. We are, they export a large amount of products to us. So I don't think it's a bleak outlook which I have. It's just that I think a lot of people got into this whole deep tech thing because of a lot of push, and maybe that's not the right sector for them, right? There's so many other sectors to explore in India. So if you really want to do deep tech, you want to do research, I think you will come into the sector one way or the other. And in India, you have to. It's not like I could have gone and worked for a big company which is doing what I'm doing. Right? I would have had to, if I wanted to work on the systems I'm working on, 100% I would have either had to go to the US or to Lockheed or to European countries to Raytheon or like things like that, right? So I think in India, a lot of people decide, okay, I want to do deep tech in India. Startup is the only way forward, right? So I hope that answers your question more or less. So sorry, the message you were saying. So, sorry, sir. Yeah, how I would reply as a message is, if you see a product working out 10 years into the future and you think that it will stay relevant 10 years into the future, I'd say go for it. Because you may not get to whatever project you envisioned, but there might be a lot of other benefits for you along the way. You will learn a ton of information, you will get a lot of experience, and you're just as hireable as when you got into it, right? That's usually what I say. If you feel that this product has value 10 years down the line, deep tech is what this is, go for it. There might be challenges, but I think it's quite rewarding. But like I said, if you feel that okay, no, you need to make money in 2 years, 100% not going to work out for you in deep tech.
See, thank you for your very interesting talk. You would have reflected on this question that I'm going to ask.
Yeah, thank you for the interesting talk. You would have reflected on the question that I'm going to ask. In India now, most of the people sitting here and outside are using ChatGPT, Cloud, DeepSeek, and other big Copilot and all that. Now, India being one of the largest IT power in the world, how come India has not produced a single LLM chatbot till today? What do you think are the fundamental reasons which has caused this situation where a country with so much of IT power not able to produce a single, even a half-performing ChatGPT?
That's a great question, honestly, and like you said, that's something which I've thought about quite a lot. And I think my answer to it will be very scandalous, and that's because we've never seen that market in that area. Right? We've always been a cost-plus country, and you can't blame us. We are not a very cash-rich country, right? I never started as a defense startup. I had no qualms about okay, I want to sell to defense, I have to sell to defense. But if I make a product in India which is extremely high quality, which is completely new and it's expensive, that's not something which is going to fly with most industries, right? They're more cost sensitive. And R&D is not something where you can be like, okay, this is my, this is how much I'm going to invest, this is how much I'm going to get out. There's no clear defined ROIs, right? So executives find it very hard to kind of spend on that or kind of rely on that. And a lot of other countries, they have a lot of benefits for doing R&D. So for example, in UK, any kind of R&D expenditure you have, you get some kind of tax benefits. Israel, I think it's almost 3 times or something you get back in tax benefits if you spend into R&D. So that's a fantastic thing, right? Like instead of companies putting into mutual funds their excess capital, a lot of them in other countries will park it into R&D just so that they get those tax benefits. Our systems haven't really developed into that form or state yet, and all of us have been kind of afraid of trying something which has a very high chance of failure. No executive wants to go up on stage and say, I spent $1 billion on this product, but it's not working. No executive wants to be in the position of Google where their Gemini, or I don't know if it's called Gemini, their chatbot suddenly became abusive. In fact, there's a very anecdotal thing. I think even before ChatGPT is a thing, Microsoft has released a AI chatbot, which was trained on Twitter data. I can't remember, I'm sure Joseph pronounced the name. Yeah. So that immediately became viral. They released it out into the public, and it started saying very, anti-Semitic things. It started supporting Hitler and things like that. That is a massive failure on any level, right? But Microsoft handled that with grace, honestly. Like they kept working on it, and finally, look, Microsoft is still kind of in the race, right? They didn't get a dropout. Our companies have been more or less focused on where the immediate market was, I feel, and our systems and policies never really supported R&D either, right? And you can't blame them. We had much more pressing needs, right? You have a hungry nation, you're going to feed the nation before you're thinking of what robot should I build in 10 years, right? So I can't blame anybody, but I feel like that the system wasn't really set in a way where it rewards a lot of R&D. So even if somebody had gone into a fundamental model, they would have failed 10 times before they would have gotten something working. And fundamental models are extremely expensive to develop. DeepSeek, which is considered some of the more cheaper ones, still took an insane amount of money. So only now is the government starting to support with GPUs and things like that. And in China, a 10-year program will work great. Like a lot of the big companies you hear in China, DJI, BYD and all, was a byproduct of a 10-year advanced manufacturing and robotics plan which they had back in 2014, if I remember. And out of that, extremely large companies like DJI, BYD and all happened. I don't think a scheme like that will work in India. And it shouldn't. We're a democratic country, right? The Narmada Dam thing, I think, was held up in litigation for decades, which it should, because that's how we work. But in China, you want to build a dam, people will move. No questions asked, no protest, nothing. It's just a different system. US, they're very cash rich. They have plenty of money to burn on R&D, right? DARPA, they've been investing defense. That's their defense research, similar to our DRDO. They've been investing in technology long before. We even had. They had drones before we had fighter aircraft, right, in India. So they have a more mature system to kind of support these people who are doing into deep tech. Like Sir rightly pointed out, there's a lot of challenges in deep tech which our policies and systems haven't really caught up with. So I'd say that is the biggest reason, is that our policies and our mentality hasn't really shifted, right? We are not thinking about what is the latest and greatest. We are thinking of, okay, what can we use immediately. If you look at all our big IT companies as well, we've never done anything fab-breaking. Most of these companies' revenues come from servicing a lot of companies as well. One of the biggest earners in the country is basically a service provider for Microsoft services, right? So the longer we stay like that, we will stay like that, right? We see only a market in these kind of simple low-hanging fruit, we'll stay like that. And there might have been, we might have seen like 10 DeepSeeks or 10 OpenAI or Anthropic and all failing before we saw one succeed. And that's not something which our society really kind of values, right? Here, if I go to a bank manager and said I started a company but it failed, he's not going to give me a loan. 100% he's not going to give me a loan. He will tell me something in Malayalam saying that so he'll say that and I won't understand, and I'll go home, right? But in the US, they see it a little differently. There, if you start a company and it failed, most people have a mentality of, okay, he might know, okay, he knows at least one way that the company won't work out, right? They're a little more supportive of that kind of thing. And R&D, you need to be very supportive of failing, right? Even at my company, we have a policy of no screaming, scolding kind of thing. And that's not because, I don't want to let out all my frustration on an employee. It's because I want him to make mistakes. I want him to be, or her to be bold in trying something new, which we as a country really hasn't adopted, right? We are very afraid of failure. So I think that's my answer, that, our policies, our system doesn't really kind of catch up to R&D, and that's why we don't have our own large language models, or we don't have our quantum systems. All of these we are lacking. Quantum we are behind, AI we are behind, advanced transportation also we are a little behind. On research, production we are great. Ether, frugal innovation, we are great. Once AI comes very popular, I'm 100% sure the cheapest foundational model will be us, right? So that is where we focus on so much, the cost.
Thank you. I think I would like to add to something which you said. I'm very happy that you're going in the defense sector, entrepreneurship, because that is one sector where the world actually will never give you. You think they are the best of your friends. And having been in the Navy, I can say the fellow naval officer here with me, in the 50s, we started indigenization process of mini equipment, which helped us to design ships and build ships and submarines, including submarine. The sonar was developed totally indigenous in India by a gentleman called Commodore Dr. Paul Raj. But for him, we wouldn't have got that kind of high-tech system. He is working with DRDO. Then of course he left and went on to head the Stanford Electrical Engineering. And I think he's got 4G, 5G technologies with him. But what I'm trying to say, what you said in the beginning, even the smallest parts we need to have. Because I know from experience, when we did the nuclear explosions, when we were testing out at 74 and then again, Prime Minister Vajpayee's time, some of these ships just stopped totally giving us space. So therefore, indigenization and having right from basics is something very much needed. And one of the reasons you maybe will know better, R&D, why we are lacking sometimes behind this. You must all realize that R&D is not a 9 to 5 job. You have to be at it. And if you think that you will pack up 4:35 and leave, R&D won't take place. So this is something that is very much needed, and it is especially in the defense sector. Thank you.
So, how is your financial requirement and how it is met?
Being in the defense sector, one of the perks is that the order values are relatively high and the purchase orders are quite valuable, right? I go to any bank and I say I have a purchase order from DRDO, Navy, whatever. It's quite valuable. They don't see the DRDO or anything won't shut down. They know that. So because of that, it's relatively easy for us to get working capital debt. So by and large, we are very reliant on working capital debt. Right now, it's given to us by Kerala Financial Corporation. So that's how we fund our projects. So anytime we get a purchase order, I go to KFC and then KFC will fund up to 80% of the project, up to 20 crores if I recall correctly. So that is through debt is how we are primarily financed. We haven't raised any equity for multiple reasons. One, I haven't yet found a right investor which I feel like understands the sector and in India, deep tech investors are very rare, first of all. Like I said, a lot of people consider food delivery apps to be deep tech. So that will not fly with me. Secondly, they need to understand, they need to have the financial patience to do it, right? We spent 5 years in R&D. I did not get a single rupee in revenue in that entire 5 years. That is not something investors these days are okay with. Or in India, at least, were okay with, right? Now, it's kind of changing slowly. There are investors who are like, okay, 10-year horizon, perfectly fine, kind of thing. And now we are kind of planning to raise equity as well because that mentality is changing. In other countries, maybe patient capital and all is more common, but in India, no. So we don't have any equity. There is some founder investment, but financial prudence is something which we take very seriously. We plan every single rupee almost, right? Last week I argued with my client about an 8,000 rupee purchase on a very large contract because we did not budget for it, right? So that level of budgetary control is kind of why we are kind of still afloat. We stay very lean, our burn rate is very low, but primarily we are funded off debt, mostly short-term debt.
My name is Suresh Kumar. There is something common between you and me. I am a mechanical engineer and you are also. But the difference is 40 years. I passed engineering in 1969 from a College of Engineering. That's introduction about me. And my understanding is about your deep tech includes the artificial intelligence, you said, blockchain, biotechnology, robotics, and quantum computing. That's I just got from the Google site. And my question comes to that. Can you say some examples of how this artificial intelligence and deep technology used in our general utilities in our common lifestyle, which you have been used? And that's my first question. Secondly is an answer also. Why in Kerala also? Why these are all not getting importance is because our society is, even the youngsters, they talk about politics and the bureaucracy is already consuming 80% of the income, or rather the tax collector. It's being 80% is being spent on feeding them. They are only 5% of the population, and this is one major example. This is my observation, and I would say that I am proud to say that I am a rebel at 77, and what is recorded, the youngsters should fight against this, and Kerala should be a society based or always thinking about science and technology and go ahead with that. Thank you.
So common examples or everyday examples of deep technology. My favorite example is GPS. GPS was something which is, at least was for deep tech, right? It was something which was never done before. Can you imagine when GPS was a thing? I think they started research well before the 2000s to put satellites into space. and then have a radio receiver on Earth which will locate these satellites and then tell your position within like whatever. Back then maybe it was 10 meters. Now we can do sub meter accuracy, right? That is, if you try to put yourself in their shoes, that is an insane piece of technology, right? Even during Desert Storm, when US invaded the Gulf, primarily they were able to navigate and they were able to coordinate their forces so well because of GPS. Back then, that is an incredible piece of technology which now we take for granted, right? Now we have a 2 meter variation in GPS. We will start cursing the GPS system. We go, why did it ask me to turn here when it was 10 meters away, right? So that's something which we will slowly start to take for granted. Fiber optic technology, that used to be considered deep tech quite a while back, right? But now everybody, I think all of our homes, telephone lines, everything is fiber optic, right? Phones. I don't know if it's true, but there's always this thing which you see online where people say that NASA launched, got a person onto the moon with less processing power than what we have on our phone right now, and it's probably true. And what we do is launch Angry Birds at the building or whatever, right? So these processors, again, deep tech, right? So I don't think you can point to a single thing and say, okay, this is a simple piece of technology. It became a simple piece of technology. It became something which everybody has access to because at some point somebody took up the cost, right? Another common example is accelerometers. Like how when you take your phone and then you hold it like this and then you hold it like turn it around, the thing changes from portrait to landscape. That uses something called an accelerometer, right? One of the main reasons why it's in our phones and it's very cheap is because there was something called a Game Boy. Game Boy, I think Nintendo, right? Yeah. So those needed the accelerometers and they ordered it in such a large scale that the price went up. iPhone has did that with a lot of technology as well. Now we take phones very for granted as well, but the technology which goes into that is incredible. More recent technology which we use in our everyday lives, LLMs 100%. I have seen in my organization itself people communicating with each other from ChatGPT responses. So it's basically ChatGPT talking to ChatGPT at that point. A lot of people use ChatGPT as therapists now, right? A lot of people come home and then they start talking to ChatGPT because they don't have a partner or they don't have anybody to speak to. That's a very common thing which happens, which suddenly we're okay with, right? I remember there was a movie in 2016 which made fun of a person for falling in love with an AI, right? But now I can 100% see people. I know people who have fallen in love with these fake AI agents and things like that. Soon, when you call a call center, it won't be a person who's speaking up. It'll be one of these, very advanced voice models. And if you Google or go to YouTube and search for the ChatGPT calling for takeaway. So it's just ChatGPT actually speaking to a restaurant owner and asking him to give responses. I also heard about an example where this company was negotiating with a Chinese company. This is a US company negotiating with a Chinese company, and they had a ChatGPT agent on voice running. And the Chinese were so impressed by the ChatGPT agent, which they didn't know was ChatGPT. During the next meeting, they were like, "Oh, will that person be attending? Because that's our favorite person in the entire thing, right?" Quantum technology and all, I don't think we kind of interfaced with it in everyday life as of now. But biotechnology, look how fast we are developing vaccines right now, right? And that's something where AI also is starting to help a lot. Genome profiling AI is doing wonders. So soon, we have a new disease out. Maybe within what would take years, maybe in a couple of months, we'll have the entire vaccine kind of genome. I don't know about biotech, so I don't know what the process is. But I'm sure that process would be much more accelerated. I know a firm who's doing advanced biodelivery systems as well. So instead of the very painful syringes, you'll have something which you won't even feel, right? And I think that uses some kind of nanotechnology too, where your injection will not hurt. You won't even feel the sting anymore. So it's just a matter of time before any kind of deep tech technology is with you in your pocket, in your head. Now brain interface is one of the other hot things which are happening. So you won't need to even type onto ChatGPT, you will have one in your brain. That's what a lot of people want. So it's just a matter of time before all of these technologies kind of get into everyday use.
one thing I forgot about the weather predictions, because today I was coming from Vendala, then I checked what is the weather at Kadavandra. There was no rain, but when I came to driving to Whitila, it was heavily raining. I think in the US and all, they give the weather prediction very close.
No, I can completely relate with what you're saying. So we use an app called Wingy. It's known to be one of the best apps for weather prediction. It's paid also. I think you have to pay 3,000, 10,000 something per year. We use it before drone flights. Before we test out a drone, we'll check Wingy and we'll be like, okay, this day we're testing, tomorrow morning we're testing, or 2 hours from now we're testing. Is it raining? What is the wind and everything? Today morning we were like at 10 o'clock with the rain, and we went early but no rain. So weather systems are incredibly complex. The physical weather system is incredibly complex. They can change very quickly, and that's why. And the US, the thing is, they have a lot more sensors. They have a lot more satellites. They have a lot more sensors. The US has an organization called NOAA, which have thousands of wave sensors deployed on its coast. So every time there's a high wave, they'll instantly get a message about it. Right? We have no such system. We have very few. So in 2019, if I remember, we had a proposal for the Kerala government for flood prediction, and we were doing research about it, and we found out in Kerala, at least back then, there was less than 24 automated weather stations which check how much rain there is, how much wind there is, things like that. Half of them was broken. So, so these systems need data to feed them, right? Where in the US, in one state, you might have 1,000 sensors or 100 sensors. In India, in Kerala, you have 20, and half of them won't be working. Half of them are manual. So a person has to literally go out in the rain and then take a measurement. If I was that person, 100% I would not do that. I would just guess, right? So these are the issues which are there. Why the systems are not so effective in India, right? Because we don't have the same level of data. But it's the opposite in other things. So with consumer data, we have the most amount of data, right? You should check open data in systems. You would be, mesmerized by the amount of data we Indians have generated through our digital media, right? Phone Pay, Google Pay, and all will have so much data about financial transactions. They know us better than they know our buying habits better than we do, right? So we have a lot of data in some situations. We don't have a lot of any data at all in some situations.
Thank you, everyone. I now invite Mr. Jose Thomas Padinarakara, member of Young Minds KMA, for the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Athul, for that wonderful, wonderful session. Before I get into giving the word of thanks, I have a small announcement to make. That is, this coming Friday, the 16th of this month, we have the KMA Annual Awards Night. And the venue for this is Gokulam Park, Kalur. And the timing is at 6 p.m., followed by a dinner. Now, talking about today's session, I think what a great session. And so I've come here, I met Athul only last week. Last week probably a lot of you would have been here. For the speaker was the opposition leader. So post this we had a brief chat of about 15 minutes to a half an hour. And that's when I got to meet Athul and get to know what is really in his mind. And one thing that I can absolutely say is, Athul has said that people our age or people, youngsters, are leaving Kerala, are leaving India, and they're going settling in Canada, London, Australia, everywhere. But it's very rare to find people my age to gel with, to meet people, to have counterparts basically. So, and it's even rarer to find startup founders in Kerala. You go to Bangalore, you go to Hyderabad, all the IT firms, all the guys working in IT firms are mostly Malayalis. And all the startup founders, most of them are Malayalis. Now, Athul, you have one person, I would say a son of the soil, I would say, who is born, brought up, thoroughly bred in Kerala, and here he is building his startup in Cochin. And see, last week when I spoke to him, I was reminded of this one person, the founder of Zoho, Sridhar Vember. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that a lot of you must have heard about him. And I was one thing that I can relate to Athul is the logo of Zoho, which is made in India, made for the world. Okay, and Athul, I know you're not selling to the world yet, but I'm pretty sure it's only a matter of time that you will be selling for the world. And one more thing regarding his speech, and the key takeaway that I personally had today was two things regarding frugal innovation and how his company is doing great works with frugal innovation, with each penny that is going in and going out, and how he's building and making such a great company that all the youngsters here aspire to work in it. And regarding his point on ISRO, why when we have thousands and millions of people here starving, we need companies like ISRO. Why do we need it? And his answer to that was, we need icons. Yes, we need Elon Musk. We need a Bill Gates. We need a Mark Zuckerberg. And I'm pretty sure, if not today, one day, every Malayali would be looking at Athul as an icon and looking at Verdatum as an iconic company. So all the best, Athul, for all the future endeavors, and please keep coming back and inspiring many, many youngsters to stay and show you through your journey. I'm sure that you will inspire many, many people. And finally, I would like to thank the organizers who were behind the scenes for organizing today's event, especially Prajit, who is running behind the scenes and doing all the back-end work. Thank you. And from the bottom of my heart, on behalf of KMA Young Minds, I thank each and every one of you for making it tonight on a Friday evening, weekend evening, to be with us and share and be part of such a wonderful event. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. I kindly request Vice Admiral MP Muralidharan, AVSM and Bar NM retired, to hand over a token of appreciation to our chief guest, Mr. Athul. Thank you, sir. To conclude this evening's program, may I request everyone to rise for the national anthem.
पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जगति तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मागे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे.
With that, we officially adjourn today's session. Thank you all for being with us.